Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I've got another Feel Good conversation with somebody I've been friends with on Facebook for a while, and with whom I've observed and thought, wow, I love her postings, and I've just been really curious about her. And it's interesting because as we go through this chat, we bounce around quite a bit on several related subjects. I mean, the first thing that we really start off with is about living abroad and the cultural need for a sense of belonging. We also talk about adoption and kind of finding out who we are. My guest is adopted and also now works as a trauma coach, and helps with generational healing, in helping piece together other people's stories. So we delve in a little bit about her story today, and we are going to speak again more thoroughly about her adoption story, and also just talking about, you know, not just the groundedness and the sense of belonging, but how we can take our first steps forward in changing our destiny, changing our narrative, our personal story, and what simple steps we can take today to start feeling better. And of course, the moment you start feeling better, how we can start changing from a place of being a victim in trauma and to start taking a little bit more control. So there's so many beautiful themes coming up today. So it's absolutely my great pleasure to bring on my guest today. That is Donna Joseph. Like I said, she's a trauma release coach, a radio and podcast presenter. She's also an author and also a kids entertainer, no less. What a wonderful, wonderful person. So anyway, let's bring her on now. So it's my absolute pleasure to bring on my guest today, and that is Donna Joseph. Donna, hi, how are you? Thanks for joining me today.
I'm very good, thank you. Very good indeed.
And it looks like it's hot where you are because you're in Dominica, right?
Yeah, but it's not actually that. Well, it is. I feel bad saying it's not that hot because it's a lot hotter than the UK. Not where you are, actually. I don't know how hot it is. No, you're all right. It's about 26 here, but it's quite cool actually.
Yeah, we're about 17 degrees here in Portugal today, so it's not that warm either, but it's much warmer than the UK, isn't it? Well,
yeah.
Whew. So it's funny, isn't it? Because like I left the UK 4.5 years ago, and you've just recently left, haven't you?
Yeah. If you'd have, if I mean, 2 years ago, if I'd have known that I'd be here, I'd been like, what? You know, really? Because it was actually 2020, around this time when obviously everything was starting to change in the UK and around the world.
Yeah.
And and there was a few months after that I spoke to my husband. My husband was very much on the side of, you know, wear a mask, you've got to be careful, otherwise you might, you know, And I knew at that point that there was probably a chance that we weren't going to make it in our relationship if we weren't on the same level here, because I'm quite strong in my beliefs. I work with a lot of the child abuse side of things.
Right, yeah.
So I was aware of things coming out on that side, which there was no going back for me on that. So thankfully, my husband, he heard me and he did his research, and the next thing I know, by about August 2020, he's applying for his citizenship here in Dominica because it's actually his birthright. And it was something we were going to do when we were like in our 60s. We were definitely going to come here, but we didn't realize that we were going to be here by 2021. And that is how quick it all happened. I mean, you couldn't make it up how, like, I was really just not packing anything until like the last minute, because I think, being an air sign, I was very much like, I'm just floating around. This isn't really happening, you know. It's like, but it is, and we're here, and it's the best move we ever made. It's wonderful.
Oh my goodness. It's really funny, you know, that we're just talking about like having moved away from a place, because I know that our talk today, we're going to be talking about kind of trauma, generational healing, and this, that, and the other. And also, I guess that is going to tie into a little bit of what's going on in the world as well. There's so many themes that are crossing over, but one of the things that really underpins it all is the sense of belonging, you know, because like living as an expat, you don't really, you don't have that context around you that you grew up with. And so there's all sorts of different things. And one thing I'm noticing in Portugal, my husband works, I think you might know, he does a show helping people come to Portugal and helping them, familiarize themselves. There's so many people moving around at the moment. This is a time of like movement. People are definitely trying to find, if they don't have that sense of belonging right now, they're trying to create new stories for themselves. So I'd like to talk to you about the potential for healing and also how narratives, our own stories, play into it. So I know that you're a trauma release coach, you're a radio podcast host, author, and a kids entertainer, which, by the way, I think is awesome. I want to dive in right at the start. Like, how did all that come into being? Like, what original thought or yearning was there for you to get into trauma? And
I think, Louisa, it ties in with what we're talking about, which is the belonging side.
yeah.
So I think because from such an early age, I didn't feel that I belonged. So from such an early age, I've been searching, for myself. So I feel like this is a really amazing time on so many levels for me, because I'm seeing things things are opening up. But I am actually seeing that a lot of people now are almost where I was as a child, like searching for, but I was like placed in this situation where I was a different color to everyone else around me, and I was adopted. And I just felt this huge sense of not belonging and it just grew and grew and grew. So from a very early age, I was daydreaming about finding new things, fantasizing about better things. And, and I think the act of doing that is what has created what I have today. And I was doing it without any fear, without any doubt. I was just a child. I wasn't developed. I was just daydreaming about more stuff, searching for more. And inevitably from that, I found more. And it wasn't all good and beautiful. I found a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have found at that age. And then that created other things in my life. So my whole life has been this like roller coaster of experiences that, I had come out of experiences at the age of 21 that a lot of my friends that I went to school with were experiencing in their 30s. And I was in a stable, I wouldn't say stable as such, because I wasn't really that stable. And I'd say my husband wasn't 100% stable either, but we were good, and we are married now. But I was sealing that relationship by the time I was 21. So I'd got a lot of stuff sorted and discovered by then. And I'm seeing a lot of people go through that process now. And I think it's why I'm awoken to a lot of what's going on in the world, because of all of those experiences. And now I see them as gifts. So I really want so many people to wake up. And I feel like you're right. There's so much movement, and literally movement for people they're moving all over the place. You're where you are, we're here. People are thinking, no, we want our freedom. But then there's another load of people that are so afraid to move anywhere, and they're stuck within themselves, and I see them getting ill, and I'm like, wow, please just, stretch open a little bit, because there's so many gifts in there when you do. But sadly, I don't think many people are, including a lot of my friends and family. It's crazy. And I don't know about you, Louisa, but I always used to feel like a bit of the odd one out, like obviously not belonging from such an early age, and the color of my skin. I definitely felt like a misfit when I was younger. But now I feel like, oh, I belong here now. I actually feel like, okay, all of that in that time of not belonging was for this time where I'm going to feel like I really belong.
Oh, crikey. I don't know if I've ever felt like I've belonged either. I mean, I grew up in a family where there were no redheads, and my family all tanned and had dark eyelashes and eyebrows, and I was so envious of them. and I had a limp as well when I was like younger. It's like, a limp, red hair, NHS glasses.
We would have gotten on so well, you and I.
We really would have done. I was thinking about that, just like when I first met you, like, and actually heard your voice, and I was like, oh my goodness, this feels like sisterhood straight away. That was
Yeah.
my instinct. But yeah, I always felt like an outsider. And people used to say, you don't look like your parents. Are you the Milkmans? And so like you know, fantasizing about your future, I was always thinking, oh, I might find out that I really don't belong to my parents. I felt like an imposter in my own family. Of course, now
Oh,
I realize, but I don't know if I've ever felt like I belong anywhere really. But I now know that I belong in my family, you know, with my husband and my children. So I've got that
yeah.
sense of belonging. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how important is belonging? Because, I mean, like, what
Oh,
does it mean to belong?
how
And why
important
does
is
it feel so
belonging? Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is, the journey is incredible, because actually, you mentioned this earlier, I think, when you were talking about the lady running away, like she's
Yeah,
always running away. And I've done a couple of talks on this. I think actually what I was running away, so I was searching to belong, and I
mm,
experienced all this. I mean, I will share a really a big experience for me, which was a big shift, and that was when I moved to London. So I moved from a village that was predominantly white,
mm,
and I felt like if I go to London, where it's a mixed bag, I'm going to belong. I'm going to
yeah,
feel, you know. And I was a bit nervous of Black people, actually. You know, I was a bit like intimidated and stuff. So I wanted to get over that, and I wanted to just get in there. And I'll never forget an experience I had on the underground tube station, where these two Black women were obviously talking about me.
yeah,
So bear in mind, I'm just like 18, 19 at this age. I'm still very, you know, very young, and it was horrible. And I had to get off the train. I can't remember if I got off the train because it was my stop, or if I got off the train because I had to get off.
yeah,
But they were so racist that I actually realized that what I had experienced growing up wasn't really racism. It
mm,
was ignorance. But from these two Black women, it was against my race as being mixed heritage. And it was so obvious, and they really wanted me to hear it. And I remember standing, and as much as I
huge.
did, as much as it's a horrible thing, there's
Mm,
such a gift in that now,
yeah,
because I got off the train, and I'll never forget, you know, there's certain things in your life that you never forget. You remember where you were.
yeah,
And I was stood on the train, and it was just sudden a feeling of like, well, who am I then? And I guess I'm just me. And it was a feeling of I'm just me inside. And it was almost
mm,
like from that moment, I was no color. I was
mm,
just like myself. And I wasn't, and I was nowhere near finding myself. But I realized at that point, and I think that's when I started the very long journey of finding myself. And I think ultimately this belonging feeling is, yeah, we want to belong, but ultimately what we're all searching for is ourselves. And I was
yeah,
running away, and now this journey of helping others is more and more bringing me to myself, which is
yeah,
just what I believe we're all ultimately trying to do, is find out who we actually really are. So
yeah.
yeah, it's full circle.
So, I mean, this is a funny thing. Like, we're both presenters and we're both coaches. And one of the things that always struck me, and it gets stronger and stronger, but at the moment I realize I was kind of giving thanks and gratitude to myself, and saying, wow, Louisa, you have absolutely created the ideal environment to learn about yourself. Like, what you're capable of, what you're not. Because, like, all the people that I work with are reflecting aspects of me back. You know, I see myself all day long, and I get to, you know, as I'm working with hypnosis or something like that, it, like, whatever is shared affects me as well. And you know, I think there's that phrase, you know, like, if you're a coach, it's like buy one get one free. You you always get a bit yourself. um
Always,
it's
yeah.
fantastic. And
Well,
I
I've
think
only
it's
I've
quite
only recently started putting myself out as a coach. I've been
really
like, yeah, I mean, I've been coaching people for years. You know, and people, when I say like, oh, I'm coaching, they'll say, Donna, you've been coaching for years, because I have, but I haven't actually
Yeah.
put myself out as a coach, and that's been my own limitations. So it's only been recently that I've really been putting myself out there in front of clients, and what you've just said is spot on. And I'm finding that, wow, there's the issues that it's beautiful. I mean, it really is beautiful. It's just showing me that this is yeah, it's quite magical, I'm finding, coaching clients, because the learnings that I'm getting. So it's like, it's never going to end, I don't think. And I think, well, that's beautiful, right? Because it's,
What a gift you've given yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like, where trauma release is deep inquiry, you know, and that's what was missing. You know, I thought you could read all the books, you could do all this training, but actually what I'm finding, the deep trauma, which is mine and most people's actually, is it is, and it has to be a painful experience. I think you were mentioning something about this on one of your videos. You have to go
Probably.
there. Yeah, you have to go there and inquire. And it's the freaking hardest thing. And sometimes you might need someone with you to do it, to help you. But it's like, when you do that, it goes. It really does disappear. It releases, because there's nothing holding on to it anymore. And then obviously, once you've experienced that level of pain, it's a lot easier to do again. So it's been through, like, you know, I've been in sessions where I've really talked the talk, and clients have like done the walk, and I'm like, Donna, you're lagging behind. You need to do the walk as well. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I did all this stuff years ago, and now I'm telling you to do it, and look at the impact that's happening for you. And it's like, Donna, do this work yourself. And it's like, wow, this stuff works.
Yeah.
You know, but I still resist it myself sometimes.
There's so much that in what you've just shared that I'd like to, I mean, there's so many little bits. I'm hoping that I can pick at all of it, and not leave some of it behind. But I'm guessing, you know, if we need to talk again, I'm guessing you'll be happy to come back and chat, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Like one thing, like you were talking, like once you tease out one of these themes and you start the healing process, it's like you pull free that thread, and all of a sudden all the beads that were holding it together, they all kind of fall to the ground and they disperse, and then all of a sudden there's some freedom. What I have noticed is sometimes you get tested after, like you have this healing experience, you think, oh, okay, I've recognized that, that's great, moving on. And then the next day, boom, something comes into your awareness. It's like, God, that was just what I was doing, which happened to me last week. I meet up with my good friend Dee, who is a coach, and she's been doing it for like donkey's years. And so I try and catch up with her, because I think it's important that we are doing our own development as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
People. So I met up with my friend Dee, and also I'm doing a sort of healing process behind the scenes. And of course, there was some overlap. And then the next day, walked straight into a situation, and I was thinking, well, I must have vibrationally attracted that somehow. You know, it's so similar that it's like, okay, yeah, I've got some skin in the game here, I've got to get involved. So like with generational healing, like why is it so important to do your own healing, and like what are the impacts throughout the family?
Well, I'll give you, I mean, for me, it's quite powerful, because I never knew my birth mother. I mean, she had me for 3 months, and then I don't remember her or anything. But I felt such a connection with her when I was growing up. And it may have been the sense of not belonging, because I was in a white family, but my birth mother was white as well, and I knew that.
Yeah.
But when I found her, when I was 21, I found out how she died, because my birth mother had passed away when I was 12, 13. And I'd actually, I think I'd created it in a way, because that daydreaming that I used to do as a child was to see a picture of my birth mum. So I used to dream and dream. And eventually my mum, who was also a foster carer, she arranged it for me. But that picture that I got, that I'd wished for, and I believe created for myself, was the discovery that she was dead. And she'd just been found at the bottom of a canal. So this
Oh my God.
traumatic information, when I think about it, I brought that to myself, like my wanting so much to that, for that. So I knew at the age of 21 that she was dead, but I didn't know what her life was like. Now I had just, well, I was in an abusive relationship at that point. So when I left home into London, I was with a guy that was very abusive. And 3 years in, I went to find out about my birth mum. Her life was, it was like looking in a mirror when I read her story, when you considered the relationship that I'd been in for the last 3 years. And it was actually that day that I left my then partner. I just walked out. I had the strength. I had this aura around me. It was like there was no way. And I knew found out I had a brother as well. So there was no way my brother, younger brother as well, the same color as me as well, which meant the world to me at that age. There's no way that he was going to meet me in this relationship. And so that was madness, because it was like we were going through the same, I was going through the same cycle. But yeah, I never knew her. She didn't nurture me. I was brought up by a mum and a dad. There was no violence. There was no anything like that. But yet, at the age of 17, I went into a violent relationship. So it's for me, that's powerful. It's like, wow, you know. But then finding out about her, gave me the strength to leave. And 6 months after that, I met my now husband, who I've been with for 30 years.
I was going to say, because at the start, like when you said, you've been with your husband and like you were 20, I was like, my goodness, that's a really lovely, long relationship. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was turmoil for 7 years. It was, we had a lot of baggage, but then after that, we've kind of, we worked it out. And now look, it's, it's beautiful. And that was 6 months after that, finding out about that. But that's, that just for me, that just makes it very significant. That makes me think, well, hang on a minute, generational trauma, there's something in that. And I interview a lot of people around trauma, and hear a lot about their families and their past generations, and go back ancestrally as well. It's like, I believe that there's stuff that needs to be released, and fully released. And I think we need to start accepting that it goes back, and spiritually releasing it from there as well, to release it going forward.
Yes. Oh, 1,000 times yes. It's interesting when you said you found out you had a brother, and your thought was, I don't want my brother to know me in this relationship, because when I become aware of things that I'm holding on to that I'm obviously not healed from, I immediately think, I don't want my children picking up this rubbish habit from me. And that is my motivation, because I see it mirrored back. Even like we are trying to kind of homeschool, or world school or whatever. I'm not entirely sure what we're doing, but we're a very tight-knit family. And of course, they pick up on my language patterns. And I also notice that there are themes running through my husband's family and themes running through my own. And I realized that my daughter really has the two patterns. And I'm thinking, well, I've got to do my part of this to try and, like we all have these things. It's so funny that you're talking about, like, we have to go back and back and back. Because I interviewed someone recently who said that it goes back 14 generations. And I was thinking, okay, well, how about I just try and find out about like 3 generations ago. And I spoke to my parents and said, and my mum and dad have been together since my mum was 17. So, like you and your husband, they've spent their life together. And I asked both of them, tell me about your parents and how did they live and what was important to them. And because I was wondering, where's my desire to look after my children and really keep them close? Got this massive fear of them being taken away or them not surviving. And I found out that my great grandmother had something like 6 or 7 children, only 2 of which survived, and she was so poor that she was raising them whilst living in an abattoir, above an abattoir, sorry. And I found out all these things, and I was like, was that actually spoken about in your childhood? And they were like, oh no, we just didn't talk about the past. And so like this has to be the generation, like definitely in my family and in your family by the sounds of it, where we say it stops here.
Yeah,
we start
I think so. Yeah, on many levels as well. And I think I when people are like, oh gosh, you just don't really want to be alive at this time, I'm thinking, actually, I think a lot of our ancestors would be wishing that they were alive right now, because I'm wondering now, with the previous wars and stuff that went on, how many people knew the other side of things like a lot of us know now. But then obviously there wasn't Telegram and, and StreamYard and all that then, was there? But I imagine a lot of people went to their grave like, and it never being, obviously we know it still isn't revealed now, but I reckon there'd be a lot of ancestors thinking, oh, I wish I was there. And maybe I've come back actually, to be here at this time. Definitely, it's I think it's a time for the truth to come out on all these levels, and within families. You're right. I mean, even when I was in the 70s, things weren't spoken about, and that was the root of a lot of my problems. If after I found out that my birth mother was dead, I've had to compassionately inquire in with myself about that now in my 40s. Well, I wouldn't have had to do that if someone had compassionately inquired about it with me when I was 14, So, and I think but back then you just brush it off and get on with it. And, I think there was a little call to the school just to, keep an eye on her. She's had some bad news, but that was about it. Brush yourself off, get on. So it's I think it's now that people are realizing, actually, and so many healers are coming out, which is great. So many healers, and I love. I don't agree with competition, Louisa. I think if all these healers can be coming out for the purpose of healing as many people as possible, and not about getting more clients than that person or that person, and just work together, then the healing that's out there right now, like quantum healing and and deep healing, I think that's going to really help encourage this, the truth to come out on a deep level, because it's not just this surface truth, is it? It's like perhaps going back. We've got DNA ancestry now and all these other things to be able to go back and clear it once and for all. I've been thinking a lot about that lately.
Wow, I mean, it is like thrilling and exciting, isn't it? The opportunity. It's almost like we have the pen in our hands. Finally, we can write our own stories. Like, because we may have felt like we could write our own stories, and I guess you can write your own story. However, that story fits into a greater context that other people have helped to create, that you have to live in, or it's assumed that you have to live in. And at some point, there is a gap between your expectations and what they want, and overlap, and it's very messy. It's interesting because at the start you were mentioning about like childhood trauma and your awareness of what goes on and what your husband knew and didn't know. So I would like to touch on that, in a second. I just want to park it. I don't want to forget about it because I think that's significant. But I met a couple of days ago who are beautiful people. I'm hoping I can get them on the show, but they're plants people. And they were saying, wherever you go, if you're ill, within a month or two, the right herb that can heal you will start to grow in your neighborhood. And I was like, oh my God. And when you were saying about all the emergence of healers, I was like, flipping heck, you know, as you're poorly or like mentally ill or whatever, like just ailing because society sucks sometimes, there are healers cropping up all over the place, and there's a reason for that. We need them.
Yeah. And I'm realizing here in Dominica, there is absolutely everything that you need for healing. My husband suffers from headaches, but he doesn't take tablets anymore. He's on Panadol, which is grown in our garden. And there's some bush tea that goes with it as well. And he can drink that as much as he wants. He can just keep, keeping the headaches away, and it's working. There's so much here. It's exciting. And it just makes it, and more every day. It's like, wow, we really have been provided with everything here. But yet when, I don't know about how you felt going to Portugal, but coming here, when moving to the UK, it was almost like escaping out with some of the things we had to deal with. But now it's like looking down and seeing what really is going on. And it's, it feels sometimes like we've escaped from a prison, looking into what's going on at the moment in the world, because all the food and all the vegetables and all the goodness is supposed to be here for everybody, but there's hardly any of it in the UK. And then I'm seeing all these things flying up in the sky, which obviously you don't get here. Coming down.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't really get them here. We get them occasionally above cities.
Yeah.
But not that often.
So coming away from that, without, going too much into it, but coming away from that, and then here, it's like you can just see things a lot more clearly. And I'm like, wow, everything we need here to survive, and to not just survive, but to thrive, is supposed to be growing up throughout Earth. And it is actually still growing here. They can't get rid of it here. It's like there's certain places in the world they just can't get rid of it because it's the rainforest winds, it's beautiful.
Wow. I mean, what you're describing there, there's just like so much that I'm just like delighted by. Like the first, oh God, like how do I fit this in? Like the first thing that I did also feel like I was escaping when I left the UK, because there was this feeling of tension, that there was something closing in around us, and we were a little bit ahead of our time, a couple of years too early for the thing, but we remembered sort of escaping. But there's that saying, like, wherever you go, there you are. And if you don't kind of change the karmic pattern, it kind of crops up. So, we were thinking, we have this thing with bossy women. We seem to attract bossy women into our midst. And, we've just left a couple behind. Fab. And then, boom, there they are. A different person, different name, different situation, but there they are. So even when you do escape, like those themes that are still kind of in your vibration are possibly still playing out. But the other thing I wanted to just ask as well is, you were saying about how your perception was clearing and has cleared since you've been in Dominica. And is it because you're having like more natural things, less poisons, there's less fear, there's less... Because I know when I sort of like ate very cleanly for a while, I felt more love in my body.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it is that, definitely. I think it's made a huge difference. I've never eaten so well in my life, and and preparing food as well. I'm preparing food. Like you do a Sunday dinner, you prepare for a good couple of hours, or maybe even all morning or whatever. It's like that every day, because it's like fresh food everywhere. So that definitely has got something to do with it. But I do feel that there was a real sense of breaking away from the fear. Like the fear with the whole traveling here, and in itself, getting here, there was things you have to do, that the rules, look at, and just trying to book the flights to come here during these times was scary. It was, and then you know, our son was registered into secondary school in the UK, and we had to unregister him, and it was like trying to release him from an institution of some sort. It was like they didn't want to let him go. It's like, it was really full on, and it was like, so I think there was a real sense of like, wow, freedom in the way when we got here. But I've got to say, like, when we arrived in the rainforest, and we've decided to stay in the rainforest. And I think the atmosphere here is, you know, even if you don't go out much, just with the windows open and looking at the scenery, like I'm looking now at a mountain on my right-hand side. And I just think that in itself is what is healing here, you know, just from the moment the air that you breathe. I find it crazy. There's people walking around with masks on in the rainforest. But hey, you know, there's crazy stuff happening all over the world at the moment. But it really, you know, because it's the most wonderful air you could possibly breathe. And I do, and we do, and many people here do. There's not too many people wearing masks in the rainforest, but
bless them. They must be terrified.
Absolutely, yeah.
No,
they're not. I was just sort of thinking the healing is on the other side of that mask. You know? Oh, hey. But, yeah.
So I just feel like every answer you give me sends me off on this like other, oh my God, that's interesting. And I don't feel like I'm really like digging into the story. So I might have to get you on just to talk about one thing. But like when we were talking off air, we were saying like, where do you start if you don't know who you are? And I guess that sort of ties in with like being grounded in your body, but also grounded like actually where you're living. But as somebody who's adopted and somebody who works with people who've experienced trauma, like what's the first step? Like how easy is it to heal from things if you don't really know your story?
Well, this is looking at these adoption stories that I'm seeing on Facebook. It's really hard for me to take it all in, because I know just how desperate I was to know about my birth mum, which is, you know, which then just was turmoil for me from the age of 14. It just But so I can really relate to that feeling. And then I'm seeing all these stories in adulthood where it's just gone completely wrong and it's just not worked out, or the birth family are like psychopaths, or the adopted family are the most manipulating people. And there's just all these, it's like, wow. I guess that's why I have a heart to want to help and do something, because because one of the things that's helped me is that compassionate inquiry. And and so it can help just to talk to someone who understands that feeling, that desperation. My story wasn't a brilliant ending as such at the age of 14, because I found out my birth mother was dead. But now at the age of 40, I realized it was a blessing, actually, because I don't think it would have been good for me to have actually met my birth mother, with where she was at that time. So I've forever forgiven her now and send prayers to her and keep telling her, thank you, thank you, thank you for what you did. Because I know now, wow, the pain that she must have been going through, giving up a baby at 3 months old. So I would want to try and help people understand the bigger picture and the gifts in what you do have. A big thing for me, if I'm honest, and what I'd say to a lot of my clients and start with, is mindfulness. Because for me, from the age of 21, well, really 18 onwards, my mind was all over the place. My mind controlled me, but now my mind doesn't. I do mindfulness. If I wake up and I'm a bit, it's not from up here, it's something going on down here. I've got this under control, and if it is going a bit, I can consciously be aware of it and do something about it. Whereas so many people don't, and I don't believe you can really compassionately inquire until you've learn how to quieten your mind down
Yeah.
first. You know, it's so important, because a lot of people are actually believing that their mind is them, and the things that are going through their mind is actually in control. And I know what they mean, because I felt that. You know, I didn't realize that these thoughts in my head were just thoughts in my head, and you know,
Yeah.
I was governed by them.
Mm.
So that's the first thing that I try and help clients. Well, I do help clients with.
Of course you do. It's funny, isn't it? Like, you're right. People really do identify with what they know inside their head. And I think we've all seen the evidence of that over the last couple of years. Because if we identify with what's going on in our head, and we're also really able to be influenced, like, for instance, you know, with celebrity, the news, you know, also, like, if we think about, like, I mean, the context that we live in is programming us from word go, and encouraging us to identify with what we're thinking, rather than possibly who we are and how we're being.
Yeah. Yeah, because all up here, it's all doing, and it's like, yeah, being is sort of lost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, I've noticed it's very rational and not so intuitive, like intuition and gut feeling. And, like, you know, when you were describing the view out of your window as you see the mountain and the forest, you know, like the rainforest, you've decided to stay there. Presumably you're feeling a sense of belonging to nature. Recognize yourself as a being, like a living creature. You recognize yourself in that lovely, wonderful environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm seeing my son as well. Okay, my son still is addicted to the computer.
Cool.
If he could, he'd be on it all the time. But when we
Yeah.
do get him to the beach or to the rockery, the river rock, he can have his hands in the mud, in the sand, for 2 hours at a time on his own, just playing around with it. He
Yeah.
also spent an hour, a friend of ours showed him how to use a knife and smooth a stick. He spent hours doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, he wouldn't have been doing that in Great Bar in Birmingham. So we never know, you know? So, yeah, I do think it has. It's taken me, and it would take most people here. I think most people would come here and something would change for a lot of people. They may
Yeah.
not feel it at first. They would feel it, but they wouldn't. Yeah, they would just start to feel better.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
that's the
yeah,
return of the beingness, is it? The return of
yeah,
the beingness,
I think
the
so. Yeah,
loosening of the grip of the ego, or the
yeah,
identity.
yeah. And what me and my husband we've done a lot of is we've let go. And to be honest, things have worked out so beautifully. You couldn't plan it. And I said
Mm.
to Eric, if we'd have planned this like thoroughly, then I'd have been working like a dog. I'd have been like thinking, I've got to do this, do this, do this, do this. Actually, I haven't. You know,
Mm.
I've just been taking it easy. And I think with obviously, you know, the energies that are going on at the moment, it's been quite hard for me to put my head onto too much, you know, too much
Yeah.
focus. I've been like floating around a lot. But things have been happening. And I said to my husband, you know what? We couldn't have planned this. We couldn't have
Mm.
planned living where we are now. You know, look at how it's happened, the connections. And it's all through connection, Louisa. It's through people that we're talking to. You don't know how long you've got here. But I
Yeah.
also think, wow, you know, connections now, I'm really looking at connections with people as gifts and exploring connections a lot more with people, because I think there's something in what's going on at the moment and the people that we're meeting,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that's more, that's less rational, isn't it? And more intuition. That's more connecting to that feeling. So are you kind of following that, like, what feels good, you're looking for more of it, and what feels bad, you're moving away from it? Is that how it's
Yeah, I'm
working?
definitely moving away from what feels bad. Like I definitely do move away from what feels bad. But it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like we went to a cafe the other day and there was a guy that was sat opposite us And we got talking to him, and through talking to this guy that's opposite us, Eric's now got a contact with a studio in Dominica that he's now going to go and, and it's like, and he was just sat opposite us. So I think, it's just this, I don't know.
He showed up like one of those healing herbs. You were
yeah,
there. The right healing herb showed up at the right time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that going on at the moment. I think just be open to it, just be open to what you feel. But some people feel more than others, don't they? But I'm really feeling into what feels right and not right at the moment. And hopefully on the right track.
So in feeling good, and from your sort of like understanding of generational healing or trauma release, how do you think that releases things for other members of your family? Does it go back? Like, what is it? What's the mechanism that releases like the family patterns, like, or the family curse? Is it forgiveness? What is it? How does that work?
Yeah, I think there's many ways. I think forgiveness, definitely. Forgiveness is huge. I think if you can forgive, then it can just let so much go. So many levels and layers can go with forgiveness. Because it can become easier to forgive once you've forgiven somebody. It just gets easier. But you know what I did when I got here? I went up into the forest. It was pitch black, and I had my headphones on, and I was listening to a gospel song, and I wasn't scared of the dark. I did have my phone with me with my light on, but I had it to my chest, so it was pitch black, and I danced, and the stars were above me, and I danced, and the song was along the lines of "Let these chains off me," and I don't know what happened up there, but something really releasing happened, because I was listening to the music, I was moving my body, I wasn't afraid, and I found myself like almost, it was as if I was shaking the shackles off my body. Now, I'm in the Caribbean, where there was a lot of stuff going on here years ago that we know, and my ancestors, it's crazy I'm here because, I'm very close to my biological family, which again, I knew nothing about when I was growing up, and I'm closer to them now than my actual family in the UK. But it was this sense of, and I've been doing a lot of energy dancing since then, and I've got a feeling that if you could get into the energy, you could actually shake off a lot of past ancestral energy, because it's all in your imagination, it's all in your mind. And I think if we could go back and start using our imagination more like I used to when I was younger, without the fear, without the doubts, move your body, shake it out, wow, you feel amazing afterwards, So that's what I'm doing a lot of, and I'm putting something together to try and encourage more people to do this movement, because some people, I think you got to move it out, shake it out. I think you said something on your recent video about moving your body.
I met a load of people who went to an ashram in Bali, and the modus, like, how they did it there was they shook for weeks sometimes. I would see these people like show up, and I think, wow, where did those shiny people come from? Like, their eyes were like really, really shiny. And apparently, like, there'd be this really big hall, and they'd all go in, and they'd all just start shaking off all their tension. And they might be a bit stiff at first, not knowing how to do it. And there would be, this is what I was told, because I've never done it myself. I mean, I've done it my own way, but there were litter bins sort of every couple of meters for people to vomit in, because as they're shaking, so much comes up for them.
Wow.
But just, I mean, you all know this, from your son, but kids and our animals, like if my three, like, I've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old, if they get, in particular the younger two, if they get really disturbed, they really need to move or scream. They get really vocal, they get really, and same with animals, like dogs will shake, won't they? They'll go crazy, and cats do as well. And I think we've been kind of told not to do it. We've been educated out of that, and I think it's inspired what you're doing. I
Yeah.
when I was in Bali, I used to sing sing in Sanskrit, and for me that felt like a really releasing thing. And of course, it's physical, and I had moments where I felt like I disappeared, like I just totally forgot where I was, and that created a lot of change for me. So I think you're spot
Well,
on about
I mean, I used to have daydreams when I was younger. So imagine I'm in this place of not belonging. But I
yeah.
do remember sitting in my room a lot on my own. And when I used to have these daydreams, and I still do it now. Now I've sort of tapped back into it, where when you forget what you're daydreaming about, you're really annoyed because it was really good.
Yeah.
And I used to get that when I was younger. I'd be like, like your mum calls you down for tea and you're like, oh, and then you can't get back to it. But in my head, I was in a really lovely place. And I really want us adults to tap back into that. Clear our minds of all the self-doubt so that we can tap into that, because that's what gets in the way, is all this like, I can't do it, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, that we have going on, gets in the way, I feel, of that really, if only, daydreaming, imagining that you are living this life that you fantasize about, going on that trip. And then, when you forget and you suddenly lose your chain of thought, it's like, oh, it felt really good. If you can feel that vibration of it feeling really good, then you're embodying that, you're creating that. And I really do feel that that is the magic. And it's something that we can all tap into very, very quickly once we've got our mind cleared, so that's why that's the road I'm on with the trauma release now, is I'm sort of mastering it with my own healing. I'm mastering a way of doing it with my own healing, which is beautiful for me, and
That's
then hopefully everyone else,
that's incredible. So you're doing it. You've also moved out of a place of fear, like away from the kind of fear mongering areas, and like you were describing with your son, how he was getting captivated by the sand and whatnot. So you're creating as much of that as you can in your life. So if people are getting, like, releasing trauma, you were kind of like starting to say that, like, you start to dream, you start to lose the fear, and you start to create new possibilities for yourself. How much of the realization of people do you think, I'm trying to say this. I'm trying to kind of bring in those old threads. When we were talking at the start about, like, where do you start if you don't know who you are? And like, where does humanity start if you don't know what humanity is? Like, we were talking about fear. We've picked up on a few kind of political themes, like about what's been happening in the world. So, like, when people are releasing their trauma, are they starting to naturally awaken to new realizations about the world? Like, how does that all fit in? Because you can't really think new thoughts if you're still staying in that paradigm of what we've been educated to feel.
and
Do
I
you,
think,
it's a really messy question. I'm so
no,
sorry.
it's fine. It's because, and I think the simple thing is, when I was younger, I
Yeah.
didn't have all that. Even though you're in the midst of the trauma and certain things are happening, it's only when we're older that I think our minds get plagued with loads of chatter, and, like, self-doubt. So you're right. It's not I understand it's a hard question to articulate, but I get it, because when you're older, you have got all of that going on in your head. For me, I didn't when I was younger, but I remember the power of it when I was younger. And I just feel so blessed that I seem to have fallen into being a mindfulness teacher over the last 3 years. It's like, who knew? It's like fabulous. So the very first thing that I work on is the mind, the mindfulness, the mindset, and it has to be. But then I very, very much do aim, if I can, to work with deep relaxation and mindfulness and imagination. If a client can just start to imagine even just a little bit, it's like, You know, it's the start. And then amongst all of that is talking. It's that compassionate inquiry. You know, trauma release is really just what I said before about what was missing at the time, which was compassion and understanding. And I think as a coach, that's the start. You know, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I had to understand a lot, stood on the platform, and I wouldn't say I was compassionate with myself, but I certainly remember it, and it was a deep understanding on a level that changed my life in a way, because it was like, wow, you know, where do I go from here then? You know, and sometimes that's what it is when you start to really compassionately inquire, and it does open something up, because you start to understand maybe actually it wasn't your mum's fault, or it wasn't this person. So that's where the forgiveness can come in, and then it goes a bit deeper, and you know, and then you may up ending, you know, looking at ancestors, but you've got to start with yourself. You've got to start just, you know, clearing yourself. I think compassionate inquiry is the key, I feel, for trauma, for a lot of trauma clients.
Excellent.
Definitely. Yeah, and dance. Looking into this, it's an area that I feel a lot of people could get a lot from. That's the finding the family. It's huge. It was huge
Like
anyway, but it's even more huge now.
How to find the family,
Well,
and then relationships.
Yeah, I mean, within my story, there's the finding your family part of it, because I mentioned my brother, but then I think spiritually it sort of happened as well. But I found my biological father's side of the family, because it turned out that a friend of mine that I knew through my brother, that I'd already met for years now, started dating my brother from my biological father's side.
What's that? Hang on.
So I found my brother when I was 19, and knew him for years, 15 years. It was 2006.
That's your brother by your mother?
Yeah, by my mother. Yeah. And we had a mutual friend. So I wouldn't have known this girl without finding my brother. You know, she's a mutual friend through him. And it turns out in 2006, she starts going out with a guy. And it turns out that guy is my half brother from my biological father.
Wow.
So I find out that in a pub one night in Birmingham. And I also find out, because I did find out what my father's name was as well, but that's all I knew. So I found out that he was my brother, and that I had 8 other brothers and sisters. Night, I found out that night, you know, it was, and it's just been a real journey since then.
Wow.
So yeah, it's full of, like, there's a lot in there. I mean, it's a beautiful story, and it's got a lovely ending. But when you consider the trauma at the beginning, finding out about my birth mother committing suicide, and then finding out about her truth, and then also looking, you know, at all of the experiences that occurred, likely because I did find out that she had committed suicide, things would have been very different. I may not have left home so early if I hadn't have found that out. So whilst it's a beautiful ending, there's also a real journey through to that ending. And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of things that people can take from that. Well, I've heard already there's a lot of things that people can take from that. A lot of people are putting too much hope, too much expectation into finding their family. Whereas when you look at it from my point of view, I'd almost let go. At the time that this all came to me, I'd let go. I'd actually let go. I decided that I wasn't, and that's when it came. And I think there's a lot in that. I think when you really, really want something, then, you know, just be aware that you may not get what, you know, what you want. But maybe when you let go and just start searching for yourself a little bit, then the truth of what you want, what's supposed to happen, will happen. You know, don't force it. So, of my story. And it's yeah, it's lovely. I mean, I've got such a big family now. it's huge. I had a big family before, and I've got a huge family now. But and another thing is interesting is that both my biological parents, I never met them. But yet there's so many gifts from both sides now in my life. And these two people that made me, and they only made me, that those two. He made many others with lots of others. And I found a sister in September through DNA ancestry, like 3 weeks before we came to Dominica. You know, she's it's crazy. And I mean, it's crazy, Louisa. We might need more than an hour. She's 3 months younger than me.
Wow.
3 months younger than me. You know, and we look very similar. It's the strangest thing.
Can I ask, like, how do you go about building up relationships with people that you just found out you're related to?
It's really I remember when I first met my sisters, my two sisters, and I was really nervous, really, really nervous. But then, you know what? I kind of really, once we'd had a couple of glasses of wine, I realized that we're very similar. It was, you know, once I relaxed, and it was just beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful. But then we're the same sort of age, and yeah, and I think they were as nervous as me meeting me, you know. So yeah, but it's can't describe the feeling really. It's overwhelming. Because, and I still haven't met all my family. There's still aunties. My father had 16 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
So I think I've probably met about 12 aunties and uncles. So I've still got many, and there'll be more people that I meet now I'm here, because I can easily go to Jamaica. Well, not at the moment, but soon I'll be able to easily go to Jamaica and meet even more family. So again, I think it will be maybe ancestral healing that I'll do just organically on this journey.
And so it's possibly as simple as just making the connection in the first place, and then just being open to it.
Yeah. I mean, so many people are so desperate. I mean, they are really, really, really desperate. And I remember that feeling. And I also remember the heartache that came from that very soon after.
And what's that? Where's that desperation come from?
Not knowing where you're from, not knowing. I think there's also rejection in there, like, you know, deep down, as much as you might be told that you were loved and it was the best thing for you.
Yeah.
They gave you up. They're not there. They didn't want you. So yeah, just this overwhelming feeling of wanting to know where you came from. You know, where, you know, I get it. I really do get it. Some people don't get it. My cousin didn't have it. She wasn't bothered at all about where or anything. But a lot, when you get it, you get it. And it's like it's a deep, deep feeling that may never leave you. You know, but then actually, then when you do, for some people, when you do find out the truth, it's even harder. You know, when you do maybe find family and they don't want to know you. You know, if you've been desperate to meet somebody and then they don't want to see you, I can't imagine what that feels like. You know,
like,
so I
rejected a second time.
Being rejected a second time, yeah, and a third, maybe fourth, because there's other family members. So I can't do anything about that, but I can be there to help and listen and you know, talk from somebody who has experienced that level of desperation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people want. They want to speak to people that understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
Maybe my story will might inspire or encourage them to just let go a little bit and be a bit more internal searching first. Because the magic in that may actually bring about, what's good and around the corner anyway, rather than forcing it.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very profound stuff. I really love that. I feel like I've had enough of your time today. I could carry on chatting with you for hours, I think, days probably. But maybe we could, take some more steps into this, another time. Like you're saying, compassionate inquiry, it's just a step forwards, isn't it? I love that. Thank you so much. If you had
Thank you.
one final message for people, what would it be?
What would it be? It would be to daydream. I'm really passionate about this at the moment. I'm doing the dancing as well, but ultimately it is to daydream, and to allow yourself that time to daydream. And I'll say that obviously there's loads of other things we've talked about in here, which is the mind needs to be cleared and all that, but actually just focus on daydreaming and taking yourself away, and seeing how that feels. Yeah. It's a beautiful trip. We can all do it.
Yeah, too right. If someone wants to contact you or reach out to you for a bit of compassionate inquiry or just to thank you, what's the best way people could reach you? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So they can find me. So I've got my podcast, which is they go to my YouTube channel, Donna Joseph.
Yeah.
They'll see that I've got
and
Donna.
subscribe to it.
You've subscribed to that, yeah.
Yeah, but they should subscribe as well.
They should subscribe to my channel. Yeah, I think that if they've liked this, and then from what I've said, they'll love that channel. Yeah. So searching for truth, but it is Donna Joseph, so you find me there, and also on Facebook. I'm getting a lot of work through Messenger, and then I'm working with WhatsApp. I haven't done my website yet. I'm just doing what I'm doing. But if anyone wants to contact me, I'm quite happy to leave my email address with you as well, Louisa.
Fantastic. I'll put all of those in the show notes below.
Yeah. So you can just contact me. That's fine.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for your time today. I look forward to further chats.
I know. I do think we need more, don't we?
Yeah, I want to. That thing I parked, about children and whatnot, and possibly what people don't get to hear, but we probably all should understand at some level. I think that's probably something we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more going on, isn't there? But I think compassionate inquiry and daydreaming and dancing it's just perfect for what's going on right now.
Yeah, I believe that if there was a movement where there was imagine 5,000 people all in the morning dancing with their hands in the air, really feeling the energy and manifesting what they want, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning, I guarantee that those thousands of people are going to have a good day.
Yeah.
Starting off their day like that with a big smile on their face, being encouraged to dream their biggest dream.
Do it, Donna.
Yeah,
set it up.
I am. This is my next project.
Yeah. You should. I mean, because dancing with Donna. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's there's so many people that get together for a group meditation, don't they? And that there is a place for them for sure, but that is something I'd actually really get up for, and we all meet at the same time zone or something, and we'll dance.
Yeah, exactly. I shared a video that I did with my husband, and I just wanted him to see it, and he was just he was watching me, and he said, "You're just making me want to dance." So I was and that's my husband. So I'm okay, I know I'm good to go, because my husband, if anyone's going to be tell me the truth about anything, it'll be my husband. And he just said, "Yeah, it's making me want to smile and dance." So I'm cool. So yeah, watch this space. I'm really excited about it. I dance every day now. And
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, God bless you. Love you. I think it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to chatting again real soon.
All right. Thank you, Louisa. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I got a little bit more than I was expecting there. I mean, Donna is amazing, isn't she? Don't you just love her energy? I've already subscribed to her YouTube channel, and she's got some wonderful stories on there, and I absolutely advise that you do that if you haven't already. We've spoken off air, and I know that Donna's going to come back and talk more thoroughly about the adoption process and, you know, kind of what it means to find out stuff about you, because it's not necessarily about you. It's about, you know, your DNA and the generations that came before you. But in piecing together your own story, you know, there's so much to do with it, you know, like failed expectations, hopes and fears and all that jazz. So I know Donna's going to be coming on again, and no doubt we'll have another really enriching and soulful talk. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us both today. I really love that you've joined us wherever you've come from in the world. Please do subscribe if you've enjoyed this, and feel free to share. That all really, really helps. But anyway, I hope to see you again real soon. Take care. Bye for now.